2025. First order of business is roll call. Kevin Dahl, here. Jackie Myers.
Present.
Sandy Edge.
Present.
Stephen Plant.
Present.
Pablo Unde has an excused. Winston Hunter.
Yep.
And Sanaya Burton, she has an excused. The agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Move to approve a second.
Second.
Next order of business, approval of previous meetings minutes. Anybody see anything? Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
A motion, a second. Winton has a second.
Second. Wow. Lord.
Okay, next order says citizens' comments. I don't see anybody here, so a 3-minute per speaker. I don't have anybody online.
Well, we don't do online anymore,
Oh,
and we have no emails.
okay. So department status review.
Yes, we'll go over staffing first. Unfortunately, last week we had a lieutenant resign, so we will be going through a promotional process for lieutenant. I have 2 officer vacancies that we're trying to currently fill, and I have 2 dispatch vacancies that I'm trying to fill. I have 4 officers that are currently in training. One is a previously certified officer, so his training should go a lot faster. He does not have to go back through the academy, but he does have to do a refresher, take a comprehensive test, and then once he completes that, he'll go through his field training, and that will get him out on the road quicker. The other 3 have to go through the full academy, so they're in the process of doing that. This Monday night at City Council, we have our newest sergeant being sworn in, Sergeant Maritsabel Reyes. She's the officer who came to us from Walhalla. She was a sergeant in Walhalla prior to coming to us, and the opportunity presented itself here. She went through the selection process and was successful in the process, and then was offered the position. So she's been in training for the last few weeks, and the feedback I'm getting, she's doing very well. So it should be old hat for her since she was already a sergeant somewhere else. Just a matter of learning how we do stuff here. And so she's doing very well. We had our initial budget meetings with the administrator, and basically gave our wish list to him. I'm asking for 7 cars this year. 6 will be marked, 1 will be unmarked. It'll be for a detective that has an aging car and needs to be replaced. I'm asking for an officer. The detective that we got on the grant this past year will be fully funded by the city, so I'm not really gaining a detective. They're just funding it, and the grant would not fund it, so it's a 1-for-1. I'm asking for a part-time bailiff and 1 dispatcher jailer. So the 1 officer and the 1 dispatcher jailer will be to marry the 1 of each that I got this past year. But since we work on 2 rotations, 1 rotation got the extra position, the other rotation didn't. So this would be to balance them out. We're all of the departments are going through these meetings. I know we have other meetings coming up with council, and then once the projections come in of revenues and that kind of stuff, then we'll know more about what will be authorized and what will not. So that's the status of our our budget process. In regards to our transfer to our new software package, we're moving right along. We had the first initial data conversion process put into the new platform, and the officers were getting to play around with it with historical data to kind of see how it works. We've got a couple of more conversion timelines that we have to go through for more data to come in, but we're moving along on that. I know for the month of April, Central Square will send their trainers to come train us for the whole month of April, so it'll be a very busy month for us because not only do we have training going on in April, but we got the spring game the first weekend, the spring concert the second weekend, Easter the third weekend, and then Savannah Bananas on the fourth weekend. So we're going to be very busy in the month of April, and then coming right up behind April is May and graduation and everything that goes on with graduation. So that's pretty much the staffing review. If it's okay with you, I'll move her into our
To
crime stats.
review? Yes.
So for the month of January, we answered a little over 5,000 calls for service that was expected with the students coming back in the month of January. We did 655 traffic stops, which was almost double what they were the prior month. We issued 279 citations, again, which is almost double the prior month. We had 5 DUI arrests. We arrested and or incarcerated 53 people in the jail. A lot of minor in possession. We had 27 in January. I know we have more in February, so those are going back up again. Several noise complaints. We issued 16 warnings and 1 citation for noise violations. Noise or animal complaints, 14, most of which were noisy animals, barking, that kind of stuff. And vehicle collisions definitely went up to 56, and then collisions with injuries, 7. And let's see. So that's pretty much it for the month of January.
Okay. Chief, just one question about, you're saying you've got your budgets and your meetings and going on like that. Do you feel you have everything you need?
Within reason. I mean, we always can use more and to do more, but we also have to do it within the constraints of what the city can afford us to do. We're going to go over the annual report here, and I'll remind everybody that the bulk of our budget is staff costs. So I have to be cognizant of that. But the city and the administration and the administrator all know that we're continuing to grow. Our population is continuing to go up, and the demands on the department are going to continue to go up.
Sure.
So we are looking for ways to carry out our mission and take care of tasks that fall on us. There's a lot of innovation that's coming out, artificial intelligence, those types of things. The camera systems that we have, the license plate readers that we have, all help us continue to do our investigations and our tasks without having to add a lot of staff. So the resources are there and the staff can handle it, but we're definitely cognizant of that and trying to my administrator knows if I need something, I'm gonna tell him.
Sure. So we're actually using a lot more AI than we thought, or?
There's a lot more that's coming out there, but we have to be very careful in how we use the AI, because if it's not used properly, it could be come out with an undesired result. So we have to keep that in check. We can't just totally rely on AI. We have to have the human interaction with it to make sure it's not going where the way we don't want it to go. But when you have we've seen phone systems evolve over the time, and you didn't need a person to answer the phone anymore. Now it's automatically answered. So those types of tasks, those types of routines and requests, we're looking at to try and streamline some of those things.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have the annual report. Everybody has a file in front of them. Look over it.
So I'll go through this, and if anybody has anything that they see that they want me to stop and address, I will, but I'll just kind of go over the highlights. So first, on page 10, you'll see the graph that we have there about our budget. You can see right there how much of it is salary, which almost 73%, almost 75% of it is salary and benefits. So every time we add staff, that increases that percentage. The services there are, services that we have to hire other people to do. It can be, let's see, some of this is absorbed in other places of the budget, but we hire someone to do polygraph exams. That's a professional service that's included in there. We do polygraphs on all of our new hires, so that's inclusive. We do backgrounds on our new hires. That's inclusive in there. So that's where those services come from. Equipment and assets is exactly that, stuff that we use every day, printer paper, ink, bullets, those types of things. And then supplies kind of overlap some of the same things I just mentioned. So just depending on what we need.
I'm not getting into a lot of that, but like with bullets and that type of equipment, we don't have any trouble getting any of that, right?
Not necessarily. So one of the asks that we have this year coming up is the sidearms that we're carrying are older, they're aging, they've had a lot of rounds go through them, and so you have to replace them over time because of the natural fatigue of using them all the time in training and those types of things. So we are asking to move from the current weapon system that we have to a new weapon system. So we're able to get that there's not in demand, but we're going to change the caliber of bullet that we use, mainly because of the costs of the current caliber that we use is a bit higher than the caliber that we're going to. The ballistics is not any different. It's actually better, what we're moving to, and the weapons platform, not only the size of the weapon, but the sights that are going to be mounted on the weapon will help the officers be more accurate in what they're shooting at. So there's, I forget what the name of the sight is called, but it's an optic sight that's mounted to the pistol, and it helps the shooter go on target quicker and know where they're going to place their round. So we're asking for that this year, and if we get it, then we'll transition to that.
May I ask what pistol you're going after? Is it SIG or?
It's a Glock.
Glock.
We're moving from we currently carry the Glock 45, we're moving to the Glock 9, and like I said, the sight that will go on them are pretty advanced. They're not the old peep sights like some of us with gray hair remember so well.
What caliber?
9mm. So if that's funded, then we'll move to that. Again, the other graph above it shows you where the majority of our money is spent, most of which is patrol, obviously, because that's where the majority of our staff is in the department. On page 9, the previous page, you can see the breakdown of the demographics of our officers. On page 17, you will see our crime numbers there. You'll see that we've had some increases and some decreases. These are our crimes that are reported to the FBI, and when you'll see probably in the next couple of months the FBI issuing a report, and then you'll see other organizations come out with their rankings of which cities are the safest cities, so on and so forth. I know last year we were in the top 10 or top 15 as safest cities in South Carolina. I anticipate we'll probably get that same ranking again. We had to change some of the numbers. You see some handwritten numbers in there. No matter how many times we go through this, we make mistakes. So let's see, just small increases. Now, the public drunkenness is, I think is 193, yes. And that's up from the previous 2 years. And that is directly related to the activities downtown. People getting overly intoxicated. The rape cases are a lot higher. Looked back at why that may be, and the only conclusion we could come to are people are more open to reporting it than they have been in the past. And we did not see any activity outside the norm. Most of the cases were acquaintance or, a known person that alleged to have committed the offense. No stranger, Jack the Ripper type, whodunit type cases. So people were more the victims were more willing to come forward and report it. Vehicle thefts significantly dropped. Thefts from vehicles significantly dropped. I wish I had a crystal ball that can tell me why that is, but I will say that our detectives, with the resources they have available to them, did a really good job last year of clearing cases and bringing people to justice. And so maybe the word got out, don't come to Clemson and steal stuff. So I hope that word stays resounding. But that's what I would say. The hard work of the department went into that. And definitely not least or last, but we had no homicides last year, knock on wood. So that's definitely a number we like to see stay at 0.
I noticed the noise violations really went up too. I get maybe more people.
Yeah, again, I think as more people become aware of what the ordinances are, and we have been stressing to the officers that those are quality of life things that need to be addressed. And so that could just be the increased awareness and enforcement.
And I noticed the animal cruelty went up a lot too. And I just we're just
Now,
becoming
these were
more
not
aware of it.
So I was going to say, these are what's reported, not necessarily. The investigation didn't necessarily prove that it was going on, but somebody alleged that it was going on, and we looked into it, did an investigation. I don't have the numbers as to how many of those resulted in charges. I know there were a handful, because we did charge a couple of people, but.
That's good.
Yeah.
Is it
This down at the
because we're
bottom with
having a lot
vandalism.
more animals on campus now?
I don't think so. I don't see a correlation of how many are allowed on campus versus off campus. I think it's just the nature of people living with pets, and a lot of the cases that we get are people abandoning pets. So somebody will leave a pet in an apartment and then go on vacation or go somewhere else, or go stay with a friend or a acquaintance and leave their pets in their apartment, and then the neighbors over time grow worrisome of the condition of the pet and will call it in. And so then we'll go and investigate it to see if it's a violation or not.
But is there a correlation with the increased number of students on campus? And because a lot of these numbers have gone up.
I don't have any data to confirm or deny that.
Okay.
It would be an assumption.
Stephen, being on campus, have you noticed a lot more pets and service, or?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I live off campus. I do notice a good amount of students walking dogs, but nothing different from the last 3 years that I've been here.
Okay.
Also, I was going to ask about fraud. What's
That can encompass anything from online scams to, person-to-person fraud, but most of what we see are people trying to buy or sell something online and then get defrauded.
Okay, because that went up significantly.
Yeah, people reporting that more and more.
Yeah.
I think also what falls in that category, and I'll have to double check it, but you may have heard of people being extorted online with
Yeah.
nude pictures and that kind of stuff. That may fall in that fraud category for the financial transaction of that extortion, so that may be part of that number. Because we don't have a category that says extortion. So I think it may be a subcategory of that.
Missing persons, that's gone up significantly as well. Is it actual missing person or somebody that just didn't show up? Went away to vendor or something?
So, without knowing individually what each of them are, it could be anything from, my roommate went somewhere and hasn't been back in 3 days and I can't get a hold of them, to a elderly person who is overdue, to, runaway juvenile. All of that is
Okay.
part of missing persons.
I can say, from my time in dispatch, the majority of the calls that I've seen have been parents calling because their kids aren't answering the phone.
Now, we wouldn't do a report on it unless we can't get a hold of them and there's some extenuating circumstances, not just a non-responsive person. They're usually like, they have some kind of medical condition or something and they can't get a hold of them and now they're worried and it's a diagnosed condition, then that will qualify for a missing person report until we could locate where the person is at. All right, on page 32 and 30, we have some graphs there that show prisoners housed. But on 32 and also page 23, I know I'm throwing pages around, but I just want to point out our demographics for issuing citations, issuing warnings, who they're being issued to, and you can, one of the things we're always concerned about, and it's always a hot button topic, is are we disparagingly issuing citations and stopping people because that fit certain demographics? And that's the whole purpose for this report. This is also statistics that we transmit to the state, because the state, under state law, we have to do that for that same purpose. So those numbers are there. And that pretty much concludes the annual report, unless anybody has any burning questions. Yes, sir.
Chief, I'd like to go back to the numbers there a little bit, but last year to before us, the one on the record there, nearly half of those are a little bit higher than what they were last year.
Right.
And I gotta believe some of that has to do with traffic and all these folks, I believe, but those kind of things certainly blow up in the mail and people ask what's going on, and,
Yeah.
that's, wow.
As the population increases, those numbers will increase. So, I don't have a crystal ball, but I will say too, I mean, coming from another college university town, there's also because of the transiency, there's always an educational void on what you can and can't do every 3 to 4 years, because as people move on and move out, they were educated, they moved on, they moved out. But the ones that haven't been educated yet, and they're still navigating life, are moving into that. So you kind of see that constantly move. And that's part of it, I think, as well. One thing I want to kind of touch on real quick, and it's been a hot button topic, it's not on the agenda, but we see a lot of stuff in the news right now about immigration enforcement, and the president's initiatives. And I've done a lot of research on this, You also hear the term 287G partnering agencies. You'll see some states that have mandated that all the agencies in the state will become 287G agencies. And actually, there is a bill at the South Carolina legislature right now that would mandate that all municipalities and counties, especially the ones that have jails, become a 287G partner agency. So real quickly, 287G is no different than what we have been doing all along under previous administrations. 287G allows local agencies to partner with HSI, or Homeland Security, when it comes to immigration enforcement, in so much as after a person has been arrested for a crime and is incarcerated in a jail and they are undocumented, that is where 287G comes into play. 287G does not give local law enforcement the authority to go look for and stop people simply because of their immigration status. That is not what it is. It is clearly not, clearly does not give that authority. It does allow a partnering agency that applies for and gets the status to supply officers from that department to help HSI in processing people who have already been arrested or who have committed crimes and are undocumented, and going through the process of determining whether they need to be deported or not. So currently, and even before this, if I'll go as simple as I pull a car over for a speeding violation and the driver doesn't have a valid driver's license. Come to find out, they're here in the country illegally. They don't have any documentation. They don't have a driver's license. And I arrest them for not having a driver's license. I take them to jail. At the jail, they notify, if it's a country that we have a treaty with, we will notify their consulate that they're under arrest and they're in our jail. If it's a country we don't have a treaty with that requires that, then that's not done. But we notify SLED, which has an immigration division. SLED will look at the person and look at their circumstances, their criminal history, whatever, to determine, is this somebody that we need to have deported? Or is it, if it's a minor crime, do we do something different? In most cases, and currently today, they go through the court process here, they're issued a court date, and they're let go. They're not sent off anywhere. If HSI or ICE gives us a detainer to hold on to them, then we will hold on to them. But when they go through that process, what they're doing is they're sending them through the immigration court system to go through due process to determine whether they're going to be deported or not. Okay, now if they're a violent person that has committed violent crime, they're probably going to hold on to them and not let them go. If they're not a violent person, they're going to issue them a court date with a notice to appear, and they're going to let them go. And they then have to go to federal court to answer to whatever civil charge of the immigration law is, and then they'll determine whether or not they're going to be deported or not. Now, if they don't show up to that court date, a warrant may be issued for their arrest for failure to appear at that court date, no different than if I issue you a court date here for a violation and you don't show up to see Judge Munn. Judge Munn's going to issue a bench warrant for failure to show. Okay, so it's the same process that we've been doing all along. It's not broadening our authority whatsoever. What it probably will do is, because of the emphasis from the White House, is more people may be considered for deportation than before. So they may broaden what types of violations the folks that get arrested here have done to qualify for deportation. That would be my best guess, but that has nothing to do with local law enforcement or anything like that. That's after they're already in the system. So, any questions?
Thank you for bringing that to our attention and explaining that, because I can see that being a,
Well, I see news articles all the time that are very misleading. And they throw a lot of these terms around, and then people get scared of them when they hear these terms, and it's not anything that is purported to be. And even so, in some of those articles, if you read down into the article and you really pay attention, they kind of get around to telling you the same thing, but it's just how the facts are presented to you and how the headlines look as to how some people are reacting to them. So, thank you.
Okay, so the next order is discussion for proposed city ordinance for the golf carts. And we have a draft in front of us to look at for the ordinance.
So we presented this to you last time. The copy I gave you tonight has some very minor changes to it, and I'll point them out to you. On the back page, at the very top, we reworded this to say, the violations of the above section are misdemeanor offenses. And the reason why we did that was because the next section talks about parking regulations, and parking regulations are civil, they're not criminal, so they're not misdemeanor offenses. At the same token, under parking regulations number 1, we added a line to say, golf carts may not park in spaces designated for motorcycles or mopeds. And the planning and codes director asked me to put that in there because the parking now falls underneath them, and they're having problems with golf carts parking in those spaces. So we wanted to make sure that we were clear in that. But everything else remains the same. I still have not heard back from the university about what they're going to do, other than I'm told that staff over there is doing an assessment on the existing golf carts on campus to see how many of them would have to be brought up to code, for lack of a better description, to be safer, or to change them out for low speed vehicles. They're doing that analysis now and trying to figure out a cost. And I have no end in sight at this point as to where they're going with that. I know there's a lot of things going on campus, and I assume, if this is going to be an expensive venture, that may take a little while for them to get around to it. However, the way this ordinance is read, if it is a golf cart that is owned by the university and is permitted by the university, it can travel in the city during daylight hours, as the state law allows for. And I forgot to mention to you, council was presented with the recommendation that you sent them to support the bill, to have the mayor send a letter of support to support the bill to allow municipalities to allow golf carts to drive at night, but council voted down supporting it. And some of the comments that I heard were that if it were to pass, it would give them the authority anyway to do what they needed to. But there was some concerns by some of the council members as to the safety of allowing a golf cart to drive at night. And so they were kind of split. When I say they weren't split, I mean there was like 3 against and 2 for, or something like that. So.
But didn't we talk about that last time, with making sure that the golf carts had the lighting and this and that?
So I mentioned to them that if this bill is to pass, we would have to enact an ordinance to allow for the golf carts to work at night or to drive at night, and then we would have to tailor that ordinance to put lighting requirements on the golf cart. So we still, as a city, can put a requirement that the lighting meet a certain standard for front lights, back lights, so on and so forth. So we still can address that in the city ordinance. I don't want to speak for each of them, but I know that there was a concern about the safety, and that's kind of why they wanted to wait and see what happens.
Chief, is there any discussion, or anything that's come up about additional parking places, or have they designated any areas or any discussion on any of that?
Right now,
that you know of?
the Planning and Codes Department is going through a process for the redevelopment of downtown. And I don't know if this has come into discussion. I have passed along to them that designating parking spaces for compact vehicles and golf carts might be a way to address this. But parking is such a premium now downtown that taking parking spaces away from cars and designating them for golf carts, I don't think is being supported right now. Doesn't mean that they're not gonna consider that, but they're more apt to just have the golf cart park in a regular parking space. And they'll do the best that they can to maximize the parking spaces downtown.
I'm not familiar with golf carts at all. Do they come with seat belts?
No.
No.
Now, low-speed vehicles do. And again, that's kind of that was part of the discussion is if you have a low-speed vehicle and you register it in the state, you can drive it at night on roads below 35 miles per hour, all you want to. However, in order to get a tag for a low-speed vehicle in this state, you have to pay property tax on that vehicle just like you would a vehicle. And so it's cheaper to drive a golf cart to get a golf cart permit in that regard. Plus, the golf cart is cheaper than a low-speed vehicle. Low-speed vehicle is a little more expensive. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's some of the consideration that people are considering.
We know at each of the meetings we had a while back, it turned out to be a pretty big crowd. Now, they were being nice about it. They weren't boisterous or anything like that, but they were kind of, what can we do and what can we not do? The state, in the ordinance they're putting together, they're pushing pretty hard. They're getting, as a result, some of which, when that girl or her husband got killed down in Myrtle Beach. And those, they go around all in the beach all the time. They're still there, probably about as much golf carts. So Columbia's pushing this pretty big to get it done. And I can see where there are pluses there. Football game, get up, go to the game, and now they go in 3 overtimes and it's dark.
Right.
I mean, they got to think about things like that. But I think in the long run, I know we talk about the students and young children getting hurt. 2 nights ago, I saw 3 kids come by on a scooter by me downtown on my right-hand side, not on the sidewalk or anything, just zoomed right by. I'm concerned about those things. So I just say that to say there's a good many people in this community living here that want to be able to drive a golf cart. And I know Columbia's pushing it pretty hard. Some of which, through an organization, is going to go. We're going to go up there on March the 5th just to hear about some of the things and see what's going on there and see how. So maybe I'll have an update on that. I don't know.
Well, I'll remind you too that that bill is originated from the gentleman who represents North Augusta, where they just put in a baseball stadium for a minor league team, and they're revitalizing the area around the stadium. And the residents there want to be able to drive their golf carts to and from that area at night. And there are more developments throughout the state that mimic that are not in a community that has a barrier island, because the barrier islands already have it. Yeah. So I think it's going to come there. But if that bill passes, then we'll probably have this discussion again. Okay, now are we going to allow it, and what are we going to put in our ordinance to allow it? Because if the bill passes, it doesn't automatically say, okay, now you can drive your golf cart at night. It says the municipality has to allow it. So that means the municipality has to pass an ordinance saying that you can do it. Otherwise, it will be you can't.
Is there any place anywhere, whether the bill or something that we can put in the ordinance that's considering a golf cart to be an RTV?
Not that I'm aware of, but I know RTVs, ATVs, those are not allowed under state law to be driven on a road.
But when you say the
But I'm
municipal,
sorry,
go ahead.
from the, if you're talking about a safety concern, somebody may want to try to do an end run and say, okay, well, we'll consider golf carts RTVs so we can drive them at night. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm sure there's someone who's very well versed in the law that may find a loophole or try to find a loophole. So that would just be something we would have to
Address that.
address then.
When we say the municipality has to improve it, is that the mayor? Is it who is it? City council?
Repeat the first part of your question.
Who would vote on it to, whether it pass or
Okay.
say no go?
So the whole council voted on whether to support the bill. The whole council would have to vote on passing an ordinance. So if we tonight vote to pass this version on to council to have a first reading and a second reading and make part of our ordinances tonight, this would be the standard for golf carts until the law allows for the municipality to allow a golf cart to drive at night. At that point, they would have to vote to amend this to allow for it. And anybody in council can make the proposal, put it on the agenda, and they vote on it to put it in there. What they may ask is to send it back to us with instruction of write it, consider it, whatever. And then we would work on that and then bring it back to them for them to vote on.
Isn't that extra work? Why don't we just include the driving at night? Because I know we're gonna have people who want to, based on what the gentleman said about
Sandy.
the overnight, Sandy, still gentleman. Overnight, you know,
So we
because a lot of
can't, the state law doesn't allow us or give us the authority to allow it now.
okay.
It prohibits
They
it.
haven't done it.
Yes.
Okay.
If the state law changes to allow the municipality to do it, then we can do it.
Okay, so now we're gonna have to send this the way it is and then come back with the ordinance, okay.
With an amendment, probably a paragraph or two of driving at night and what the requirements are to drive at night.
Again, I'm asking this question because I'm not familiar with golf carts and how many people can be. So number 4, it says it'll be unlawful for the operator to allow over occupancy. What is the occupancy of a golf cart?
It depends on the golf cart. You have 2-seater golf carts, you have 3-seater golf carts.
Okay.
You go on campus, you'll see a 4-seater golf cart. But the bench seats on there are generally designed for 2, maybe 3 people to sit on the seat. If there's not enough room for somebody's fanny to sit on there, then it's over capacity. Because I see them driving around where they're sitting on each other's laps and hanging all
Dogs
over the
and
place and. yeah.
Everything else, yeah.
So I would argue that we could make the argument to a judge that there's too many people on the golf cart. And all my officers have cell phones now that are department cell phones to take a picture with them to court and show the judge that it was over capacity.
The thing that concerns me is when and I asked that simply because I didn't even know there were different seats on these things. That I've seen people with dogs. I mean, that's a concern to me because you never know what a dog is going to do. It could go after. If there's no seat, nothing holding it in or anything. Is there any allowance for that? No.
Interesting point.
But I mean, because it could
You
cause
could put it in there, but I know what we're gonna run up against.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, there's nothing against the law to allow a dog to ride in the bed of a pickup truck with no cab or anything
I
like that
hate
on it.
that.
I hate it.
Even though I hate it too. You never know what the dog's gonna do, and if you get in a wreck, the dog's gonna go flying. So I think we're gonna run into that counter argument if we try to restrict, be a little more restrictive than that. You could put it in there, but whether council will support it, whether the community would support it, is what we have to think about.
It just seems, because it's all open, and It's just, I can't, I
Oh,
just
I
see,
agree with you.
you know,
Yeah.
I mean, I just see dogs, because
Well, we
there's
had this-
nothing to hold them
We
in.
had the same discussion about children
Yeah,
and infants. We've
Yeah.
seen people holding infants in their arms driving down the road with a golf cart. That is not a
Yeah.
very smart thing to do, in my opinion, but people do it. And there were very vocal people at the meeting, those of you that were at the meeting remember, about that's their choice. Whether they want to do that or not, no matter how wise or unwise that choice was, it's still their choice to do. So, we did contemplate when we drafted this, putting provisions in there for children and how they may or may not be restrained, and more specifically, infants. We kind of skipped over the, above toddler age and started talking about, because in a motor vehicle, you have to have the child belted.
Right.
They have to be either in a car seat or in a car booster up to a certain weight. So we started down that road and then got feedback that it's getting too cumbersome.
Well, something simple as
It varies
weight
by
requirements
state, too.
should be just
Weight.
under a certain weight. Just keep it simple.
You all, if you all want to recommend that, then we need to have language to put in there to recommend it.
Under a certain weight, you ain't supposed to put the kid in the car.
I mean, you could put something in there to say if a child is under a certain amount of pounds, I have to look up the statute to see what the state, I would recommend being in line with the state law. But I think they do age and weight,
Varies by
then
state
they would
too.
not be allowed to ride on a golf cart.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there
And I
has to
know
be
we're gonna
variance
get
in
opposition to
state
that,
too,
because
so-
I know we have residents that put children that meet those requirements on golf carts and take them to school at Clemson Elementary,
Yeah.
as well as take them from one side of town to the other on College Avenue.
But if they meet the weight requirement, then that's not a problem, because it's a little bit safer. They won't be as easily projected if there's an
yeah,
issue.
the projection part, and the same way, how about restraint, how about pets unrestrained? Restraining pets
If you
It's
have,
gonna
in the golf cart.
Fall
If you have a
under the
Great
same
Dane, you're good.
thing.
Yeah,
I think we're getting
Okay.
a bit off track, but
So, I mean, we can put this on the next agenda and continue to have a discussion instead of referring
I
it.
just-
But I'm gonna, a scenario, you restrain a dog, how do you restrain a dog?
there
You
are
just-
belts.
Well, this is how far into the weeds we can get. Somebody's gonna put just a regular old collar and a leash on the dog, put him in there, and tie the leash to something in the cart. Cart's going down the road, dog jumps off the cart. What happens with the dog then? The dog gets drugged behind the cart because of the leash in it. So I know you're shaking your head no, I'm a dog owner and lover myself. I would never do that with my dog. But there are people that will do that, and they will argue, well, my dog's restrained, he's got a collar on. I said, if the dog falls off with a golf cart while you're turning the corner, you're not gonna be able to stop in time, and that dog's gonna get drugged behind the golf cart.
Oh, I was shaking my head that there's a vest and that there's actually a seatbelt that attaches to the vest. That's,
But you would have to put that in the ordinance to say, or some verbiage there to say they would have to use a device like that in order to travel with a dog. Now, and you went through this with me when we were talking about the leashing law, you have different sized dogs. So you're gonna tell a woman who has a pocketbook dog that they have to put that same apparatus on that dog in
Yes.
order to go down there. They're gonna argue that. I'm just playing devil's advocate here, please. I'm not advocating one way or the other, but I'm anticipating now how this is gonna be, and then we need to put an ordinance in place to regulate golf carts in the city, because we've got a problem that we need to address. But if we start going down these roads before we actually bring something before our council to get something in place, we can always address this later,
Yeah.
like the driving at night. And when the driving at night, if it comes up, you can address some of these things that, these restraint requirements, because now we're gonna allow you to drive at night. It's a safety issue then we want to add these other provisions in the ordinance.
So you want to get something out there now?
I want to get something out there now
Gotcha.
before we get too close to football season,
Ah.
because we're going to have to educate people before they come into town that they're either we're not going to, this one right here, if they come from out of town, they're not going to be able to use their golf carts. You're going to have to be a resident or property owner based on this in order to be able to use a golf cart.
So somebody who's renting a house, the golf cart cannot go with it.
If the golf cart is registered by the person who owns the house,
Okay,
and they allow the person renting the house to use it, then it would be permissible.
We can address that in the amendment. It's not, that's not in
well,
there.
number 9, I'm trying to figure out how that 9 fits into that.
Number 9,
Yeah, there's no
It
doubt.
said property cannot be rented or hired by a third party.
Oh, you're on, is that the old one?
so what that is addressing is,
I think he's on the old draft. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the
that's the
old.
old one, yeah, that's the old one, but, okay.
yeah, it says, under 8, it says all golf carts must be permitted by the city of Clemson, and the permit must be prominently displayed at all times. Golf carts with windshield shall affix the permit to the outside of the front windshield on the driver's side in the bottom part of the windshield. Golf carts without windshield shall affix the permit in the front next to the state decal. Golf carts owned and with a current permit by Clemson University are not required to be permitted by the city of Clemson. Only Clemson city residents and businesses physically located within the city of Clemson are eligible for a city permit. Proof of residency is required. Residents who rent a golf cart from a business must obtain a permit from the city before using the cart inside the city and must prominently display the permit during use. So if you're a resident and you rent a golf cart, so you don't own it, but you're renting it, you still gotta get a permit in order to be able to use it. All right, city permits are valid for 3 years from the date of issuance. If the ownership of the golf cart changes hands during the 3 years, the owner must register the cart. Golf carts found within the city that are not properly permitted are subject to impoundment.
Proof of residency, that's ownership of property.
Well, no, that you could be renting a home and that would be a residence. So you would have to show a lease or something saying that you live there, that you have a lease there. So if you have a rental agreement,
For game day house, because we got a lot of game day houses downtown. If they're only, just, you know, they rent the house, sometimes tickets will come with it, sometimes golf carts and tickets and a parking space will come with it.
if the person, if the golf cart's gotta be permitted
Yeah, I
regardless.
understand that.
Okay, so if the person who owns the property permits the golf cart, but allows somebody else to use it, then it's properly permitted.
But then the driver who would have to get a copy from the person he's leasing the house from to take with him so the police officer would know that he is leaving.
No, it doesn't mean that only the resident can operate the cart. The cart itself is tied to that piece of property. And if it's properly permitted, anybody can use it,
Oh,
okay? But because it's tied to the property, it's tied to within the city limits, okay? So as long as it gets properly permitted and it has a proper permit, the biggest reason for this is we need to know who owns that golf cart. Because if that golf cart is illegally parked somewhere, we know who to issue the citation to. If the golf cart is dropped, in the middle of the road somewhere, we know who to contact when we tow it to say, hey, come get your golf cart from Tow XYZ Company because it was in the middle of the road. The way things are now, we don't know who owns the golf cart. And that's one of the biggest issues. And it's limiting people from coming in from out of town, trailering their golf cart and driving it around town. Now, if they have a IPTE parking space on campus and the university doesn't regulate it over there and they let them run around on campus, that's fine. But once they cross 93 into the city, they're subject to these regulations. And they can't be cited.
So where are we at this point? Are we making a motion? or-
I guess a motion to send this to council.
I motion that we send this to council as written,
Okay, that's the first. We have a second.
or should I motion that we send section 18-37 golf carts to the code of ordinances to the city council for a vote. That's the motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes.
Okay, so I will put this, it won't be on Monday's agenda, it's too soon. The first thing they're gonna want is a discussion item about this. And so I encourage everybody on the board to be present when that comes up. I will let you know.
Okay.
And then you can express everything that you've expressed here to them to have this discussion about it. And you can express addressing things down the road and all those types of things to them. But I think it's important for council to hear directly from you as to what you discussed, what you remember from the community meetings that we had, and how strongly people felt about the topic and so on and so forth. It'll be a Monday night, and as soon as I know which Monday night it is, I'll let you know.
And we don't have any more scheduled community meetings.
Not currently, no.
You wanna see some people show up, they're gonna show up. But, yeah.
So it'll come up as a discussion item first, and then if they're okay with everything and they don't want any changes or anything like that, then it'll come up for first reading, then second reading, and then it'll become an ordinance.
Okay.
All right?
Request presentation discussion. Anybody, Fisher?
So next month, we have the service dog,
Next month,
next month, in April.
April or March?
I'm sorry, March. I was thinking April because we don't have one for April. So,
Okay.
Maybe a couple of real quick questions. You said, do we, as I thought I heard, there is no online from our meetings here that people could sign up for? Or
no,
is?
there's no comments. They can't make comments online. They can watch the YouTube stream, but the council voted no longer to take comments online during the meetings.
Okay. And the other thing, I've kept this close to my bed about a letter about, and we all, I'm sure everybody got it, about congratulations, thank you for being on there, and oh, by the way, I got a little confused under transparency and integrity. And what I looked at was in, paragraph 3. You should refrain, and I need some help on explanations of this. You should refrain from public discussions regarding any matter appearing or likely to appear before the Police Advisory Board outside of the context of the public meeting of the Police Advisory Board. So I read that and I thought, I gotta be careful what I'm saying to anybody or whatever, and it may be nice to hear again, what does that mean? Or I don't wanna step on something but it's,
I read that too and wondered about it. Yeah, I read it too.
When I was on the planning commission, that was the same type of language that they used. I'm not sure if that's just a form letter that they use for all of the boards, or.
probably is.
I think it is.
But I'd like a
So
definition of that.
it didn't bother me because I had seen it before when I was on the planning commission, which is more, you can't talk about.
It was.
You shouldn't be talking about stuff outside of the board meetings.
If you can have Carla take a look at that and write that down, and I will get clarification
Okay,
and send it out to you.
okay, good. That would be helpful. Sometimes I need help.
But I never thought about it because, again, I seen it before.
Well, people watch it online, aren't they?
Did you want to see?
I got one.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, they can.
Well, they can once
Yeah.
it's posted.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't watch it live.
Right, but I mean, so people know what we talked about,
Right.
yeah.
So they can't call in either, and is there any way for them to send a question or ask a question or?
Oh, they can send they can show up to the meeting, ask a question, or they can send an email to myself or to Carla
Okay.
prior to the meeting, and we can read it
Okay,
and try to address it. But I know that the council is considering changing some of the rules about public comment. So,
all right.
All right, that was, I guess, our open discussion as we're going through it. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Thank you.